In this video, we're going to discuss the nature of theory as it pertains to social science. All social sciences are built around theory and research, and the building of theory and the process of doing research are ongoing within the fields that comprise social science. So educational psychology as a piece of social science is no different, and really it is built around the science of learning, understanding the nature of learning. So the first piece of that is the theoretical piece, and so what I'm going to try to do here is to discuss the theoretical framework that we use to try and understand the nature of theory, how theory works within the field of educational psychology, and then from there we'll go on to do a little bit deeper dive into um, the different processes that we use to build a theory. So in this first video we're going to focus on the purpose of theory, and then in the follow-up video we'll look specifically at the nature of theory building. So here's a definition of theory. So it's a set of interconnected constructs and propositions intended to explain and predict a phenomenon or behavior of interest within certain boundary conditions or assumptions. Okay, so it is a conceptual framework for understanding things. It's a lens that we look through to try to do things. And in our main construct of theory, looking at theory as it relates to learning, there are many different theories of learning. There is not a theory or a single theory of learning. There are many theories of learning. The same thing will be true as we look at motivation. Motivation, there are a range of different theoretical perspectives that help to look at the nature of motivation as it pertains to learning. So theory is a unique lens that provides us an angle or a perspective on a particular phenomena, in this case learning, and that helps us to ask questions and to go through the process of explaining the phenomena that we see related to learning. So it is literally a framework for us to understand things. So that's the process that we're going to try and follow here, is to try and understand the nature of that theoretical process as it works within educational psychology. As that uh, definition implies, there are three main areas in which learning takes place, or three main areas, I'm sorry, in which the theory helps us, okay? And they are to explain, predict, and control. So the main function of theory, as the definition implied, was to explain how a phenomenon takes place. And so we need to provide that framework that says why. Why did this take place? It's one thing simply to observe something and say this happened. It's another thing to say this is why this happened. And so theory provides us with that answer. Why did learning take place, or why did motivation take place in the particular way that it did? That's really the main thing that we focus on when we're dealing with theory. But theory also allows us to predict future events. So a good theoretical framework is accurate in helping us to say what's going to happen next, right? Because the conceptual framework does a good job of capturing the field, then it helps us to really grasp that notion and really get a handle on it. And so if that's true, then we should sort of know what comes next. As a teacher, that becomes particularly important because essentially we are trying to predict student behavior. We're trying to predict student learning. If I do this as an educator to try to create a learning opportunity, will the students respond in this particular way? So that notion of prediction is critical to being able to be effective as an educator. So educational psychology, of course, then is trying to do a good job of helping educators to predict, if I do this particular strategy, this is how the learning is likely to happen. The third factor here relating to the purpose of theory is about control. And this is not control as in I am going to control a child and be sure that the child does what I want them to do. This is control in the sense of how we think about it within theory and research. Okay, control in the sense of meaning there's a factor or a variable that may adversely influence the circumstances that we're trying to create. There's a factor that may interfere with the learning or may interfere with the motivation. And a good theory will predict what that factor is, what those things that we call intervening variables are, and then that allows us to make sure that those things don't impact what we do. Okay? A simple example, if you try to teach a class after lunch to a group of elementary students, you know that the fact that they just ate lunch is going to kind of make them lethargic, and so you probably want to engage them in some kind of very active process right after lunch to help keep them motivated and focused on their activity. So the intervening variable in that case is the fact that the kids just ate lunch, and that affects learning. So you're saying, I'm going to control for that because my theory predicts that the kids will be lethargic after school or after lunch, and so I'm going to choose a strategy that's going to help to eliminate that or at least minimize that fact in the student learning, and ultimately that can help to lead to a successful activity that will facilitate student learning. So these again are the three main purposes of theory: to explain, to predict, and to control.